Welcome to the Cold-Case Christianity Broadcast, the only Christian case-making program hosted by a cold case homicide detective. J. Warner Wallace has been investigating cold case murders in Los Angeles County for over a decade. His work has been featured on Fox News, Court TV, and Dateline. For more information about Jim's work and the case for Christianity, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. Now, here's your host, J. Warner Wallace.
Welcome back to Cold Case Christianity. This is J. Warner Wallace. Okay, we're going to do something today that I thought long and hard about whether or not I would do it on our show here at NRBtv and on a podcast because, for number one, a podcast is not visual. And we're going to talk about visual things today, okay? But do your best. If you are listening to the podcast, remember our media presentations, including all of our multimedia presentations, are on our YouTube channel. And you can look at our YouTube channel and see that there's a category there that is about the existence of God on our homepage of our YouTube channel. That probably has the strongest collection of visual presentations in that little section there on God's existence from a church presentation I did in Texas many years ago. I think that'll give you at least some sense of what it is we're trying to achieve with visual presentations. Today, what I want to do is something that I wasn't sure this would even be appropriate for our show because it's such a niche-y little thing. But I think it'll help you not only think about how things are visual in this culture, but what you can do to make a case to your own kids, to your own congregation, to your own Bible study, to your own youth pastorate. We're going to talk about 3 simple rules for apologetics or Christian case-making multimedia presentations. 3 simple rules. Because I see this all the time that at some point, have you not been in a class somewhere where someone's teaching some content and they've decided they're going to use a PowerPoint presentation along with their teaching? And they think that that's somehow multimedia because I guess I got a screen glowing behind me. When in fact, it usually is a teleprompter that just has a bunch of words and bullets. It's not really visual multimedia or even multimedia at all. It's single media, it's words. And if you're saying words, I always say you don't need to use words, that your presentations need to be something other than that. Now, why would this matter to you if you're not somebody teaching apologetics? Well, I think it should matter to you because we have a phenomena which I've covered in the last 7 episodes of season 6 of our show. Young people are leaving the church in record numbers. And it turns out that if you care about the future of the church, you need to care about the future of young people. And it turns out also that we can reach young people using visual media because this generation has been brought up with the glowing rectangle smartphones in their hands. And those smartphones have made them digital natives. That's the way they're described. You and I are digital immigrants. They are digital natives. But more importantly than just being digital natives, they are visual natives. They are reached visually in a way that is unparalleled. Virtually every popular social media platform for young people is a visual platform, not a writing platform. And those writing platforms like Twitter allow you to embed videos, and those are the most popular tweets you're going to see. A picture, an image, a meme, something visual. So our learning how to communicate visually is going to be the cornerstone of our moving forward with young people. Whether it's you're teaching apologetics or anything else you're teaching, even in how you're engaging your own kids. So I wanted to take some time in this episode of our show to talk about the 3 simple rules that I think will help you become a better visual communicator. And we've also talked about this on our website. You can see it. I have a whole section on just Christian case-making techniques, and it's in that section of the blog. And you'll see it, 3 simple rules for apologetics multimedia presentations. If you have to just search for it by the search engine at the top of our webpage, that will help you. Okay, now, I'm going to give you the first one before the first break, the first simple rule that will help you, and that is that I want you to keep this, how can I say this in a way that makes sense? Look, in my class at Biola, I teach about this topic. It's called Applied Apologetics, but really what it is a series of techniques and strategies to help Christian case makers do a better job at Christian case making. So I take some time to show them how to engage in visual media, and I have a whole section of the class that I just call Death by PowerPoint, because it's very easy to kill your audience with PowerPoint, right? And part of that is because we don't do this first thing I want to teach you, which is to keep it outwardly focused. Keep your multimedia, whatever's on that screen behind you, whatever you're using to tell your story, it's not about you. PowerPoint is not a teleprompter that you click into place one line at a time so it can remind you what it is you are to say to the audience. I realize that your laptop, your tablet, whatever you're using to monitor where you are in your presentation, I realize that for the most part, is looking at you. You can read it, but it's not there to teleprompt you. It's there to communicate something for you. And if you're using words in your presentation, I would suggest you don't need words on the screen. Unless the words on your screen you're using to really lay in on a point, to really make a point, to emphasize a point where, hey, I want these 3 words to stick in your head all the time, well then put those 3 words up there. But if you're using words like, there's 5 reasons why you ought to believe this, and click bullet point first 5, click second. By the way, when you do that and you lay in 5 bullet points, your audience is about to die, okay? Because they see the first point click up there, and they see all that space underneath that first line, and they know you're going to fill that up with the next 4 clicks. And if you take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes on point 1, they're like going, you've got to be kidding me. I can see there's going to be 4 more points here. How long is this one boring slide going to take? Well, that is multimedia that is focused on you and how it helps you to remember your talk, rather than focusing on them. I will tell you one thing I learned a long time ago. Our attention spans are shortening. It's because the visual media is shortening. This does not mean that people won't watch a 3-hour movie, because they still will. But scene changes are happening at a much faster pace than they ever were before. If you shot a film in 1950, you might have the camera on one person until they completed their entire sentence. Then it goes to the other person. They complete their entire sentence. Watch movies today. Nope, it's over his shoulder. Halfway through the sentence, it changes over to here. It's over the other person's shoulder. It's standing off to the side. It's what's going on around them. Scene changes. Turning corners. We have a shortened attention span. Our multimedia presentations have to turn corners, and they have to be. So for example, if I was to give you my multimedia, like I sent you my PowerPoint, I think you'd have a hard time trying to figure out what my message even is, because there aren't many words in my PowerPoint. I'll show you a slide from one of my presentations that talks about God's existence. And here's the slide. You'll see it here, right? It's just my son posing as a dead person shot in a room. Now my point in this whole slide is I'm going to show, through clicking through some flip animation here, how if you can explain everything in the room by staying in the room, it's not a murder. Because I want to transition and show them that if you can explain everything in the universe by staying in the universe for an answer, the same way if you can explain everything in this death scene by staying in the room for an answer, if you can do that, then you've got no reason to suspect there's a God. It's only when I get out of the room for an answer that I know there's a murderer in this scene. And it's only when I get out of the universe to explain what's in the universe using something other than space, time, matter, and physics that I know I have an outside cause that transcends all of space, time, physics. Do you get it? Now my point is that visual image is pretty graphic, right? But it works every time, because it's, number one, it's quick, it's graphic, it's not a bunch of words, it's not for me. It's for them. My words are used to supplement the media. Does that make sense? In other words, I've decided from the very beginning, the presentation is not to help me, it's to help them. Keep it outwardly focused, not inwardly focused. Take a break. I'll give you another couple of tips that'll help your presentations communicate more effectively. I didn't grow up in a Christian family. I didn't know anybody really who was a practicing Christian, who ever even talked about the gospel. But my wife was interested in going to church once we started having kids. So I thought, okay, I'll go as an atheist. My family is full of people who would be happy to go to church as atheists. So that was part of my tradition. I'm happy to go as well. And the pastor that day said something that was stuck out in my mind. He mentioned that Jesus, he claimed that Jesus was the smartest man who ever lived. And I thought, is that true? So I bought a Bible. Now, I was the kind of person who said, look, I don't believe in people who trust in things without any good reason, without any good evidence. As a matter of fact, the Christians I did know, when I asked them, why are you a Christian? They really couldn't give me, even the police officers I knew, who would make a case for why that particular robbery suspect was the guy who did the crime. Oh, but you ask them, give me 4 or 5 reasons why I should trust the Bible. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't even tell me anything. They couldn't give me a single piece of evidence. And I thought, wow, this kind of belief that's not grounded in anything tangible. It's just not, I'm not interested in that kind of belief. that kind of faith? Well, it turns out there are really three ways to define faith, if you think about it. Some beliefs are unreasonable because you believe something in spite of evidence to the contrary. I know people who do that. For example, if you think that warts come from frogs, you believe something that is not true. We know where warts come from. They don't come from frogs. If you believe that's the case, you believe something unreasonably because we have evidence to the contrary. The other kind of belief, though, is kind of an accidental blind belief, where you believe something even though you have really no evidence to substantiate this. My father, for example, we didn't grow up together, and I assume he's my father. I'm sure he's my father, but to be honest, I don't have any evidence. I don't have a paternity test to prove he's my father. So I believe this, even though we didn't grow up together, and I don't have a paternity test. I could be right, I could be wrong, but I think I'm right, but I could be wrong because I have no real evidence to ground that on. That's a blind trust, a blind faith, a blind belief. The third kind, though, is a kind that is actually grounded in good evidence. You believe something because of the evidence. It turns out of these three kinds of beliefs, the Christian worldview is grounded in the third kind of belief, which I call a forensic belief. A belief that is grounded in evidence that we can demonstrate publicly for others. So you can hold an unreasonable faith, or a blind faith, or a forensic faith. It's up to you to decide which you will hold. But the Christian tradition calls us not to hold to that truth claim blindly. And it's not unreasonable. Instead, it can be believed and be held on the basis of good evidence, and we call that a forensic faith. Okay, this may seem a little bit counterintuitive because sometimes people will say, okay, keep it simple, stupid, it's the best rule, right? The KISS rule, keep it simple, stupid. But when it comes to visual media, I think you can make it much richer than you can, let's put it this way, you can convey a very detailed concept with a visually rich approach that I think might change everything. I think it might actually allow you to go further with an audience than you've ever been able to go before. So the second rule I'm going to ask you to obey is this one. Keep the presentation visual and make it richly visual. Like I said before, as much as is possible, use images. Create iconic images to convey certain principles. I'll give you an example of this, okay? I'm going to show you, also from my talk on God's existence, I want to show you an image from one of the talks that really tries to make a case for design. Like, how do we know when we see something that it has been designed rather than evolved over time through random processes or through processes of just space-time, matter, physics, and chemistry? Well, this image, I think, is helpful because it shows the complexity of a bacterial flagellum, a little motor in a bacteria that moves the tail, that helps the bacteria to move. Well, I think there are 8 things that I would look at and say, no, those 8 things speak of design. So I created 8 iconic little shapes. And now there are some words on here, as you can see, and there's a designed acronym. But really, in the future, going forward, I'm not going to use the words. I've created a set of icons that I can use later on to actually make the case without words. So I'll give you an example of this. Let's go back to this illustration one more time. So if you see it, there are these 8 things, dubious probability, echoes of familiarity, you get the idea. Those 8 things, I think, are all present in the bacterial flagellum, and they ought to indicate that this is designed. This is a far better inference, design, than evolution over time through natural selection. Because you can't get these 8 things through evolution over time through natural selection. And even, by the way, if you only had 4 of these things, that would be enough for you to infer design. You don't need all 8. 1 would be enough for many people, but certainly the more cumulative it is, the more powerful it is. So you see what I've done? I've laid out, this is the template, these are the 8 things. I've created little visual icons for each of the 8 things, and I've surrounded the bacterial flagellum with these icons. Okay, great. Now, I want to illustrate why this works, and it works even intuitively. So I tell the story of how in my front yard, we've got a bougainvillea tree, and in the bougainvillea tree, my cat sits very, very quietly at the base of that tree or on the car next to the tree. Why? Because there are birds' nests in that tree, and he wants to get the bird. Not a good idea. We have to constantly make sure he's in the house, so he doesn't do that, because he will want to do that all the time. And we like to have the mockingbirds in the tree. Okay, well, bird's nests, if you saw a bird's nest in a tree, would you infer that that just kind of grew in the tree naturally? Would you say, wow, look what wind can blow these pieces into place in such a way that all I need is the laws of physics and chemistry acting on space, time, and matter, and before long you got a bird's nest? No, you wouldn't. You would look at that bird's nest and you would say, that was designed by birds. Intelligent designers put that bird's nest together. Well, why are you thinking that? Well, it comes back to those 8 things we've already talked about in the bacterial flagellum, right? Let's show them now in this image of the bird's nest. Now here, I do not have to reuse words anymore because I've already introduced the visual aspects of this presentation, right? So now all I have to do is put those little icons in place and I can demonstrate, well, yeah, I don't have all 8 right now. I only see like maybe 5, but that's still a more reasonable cumulative case than inferring that it happened by way of natural selection or through some physical process. It's clear that even with only 5 of the 8 attributes of design, we still know that that's a designed nest. And that, I think, is incredibly important for us to remember, that you don't need all the attributes of design to make the case. And again, I could have just had a slide where I just wrote down, here's 1 line to 8 bullet points for the 8 attributes of design. But I don't want to use any words if I can help it. I want the words to be the things that come out of my mouth. I can tell you, when I first started doing this, it was in front of jurors. And we did it for murder trials. And the prosecutor I was working with at the time was so uncomfortable using this new technology. This is back in 1999. New technology called PowerPoint. I don't want to try that. I'd rather just have these printed boards that the trial prep people would make, and they were basically not very visual. They were just words, big printed foam core boards, and he would bring these and put these on the wall. This is how all casework was done prior to PowerPoint. But sadly, when PowerPoint came along, it just became the digital version of words on a white background. I said, no, we can do better than that. We can actually make this visual and show the cumulative nature of the case graphically, visually. And this is how we started to do it. And there's going to be some hesitancy to move in this direction if you're used to being dependent on words. But again, if you are, it's because you're doing that because you think that that PowerPoint is for you and not your audience. So I told him, his name was John, I said, John, if we're going to do this, if you're going to say it, you don't need to write it unless we think that that visual list is compelling visually. If it's not compelling visually, let's just say it. Now, we can find a way to make it graphic, make it visual, and then what happens is you've allowed screen space to be saved because I'm not trying to cram in a bunch of words. The icon holds the idea, and then I'm able to use that over and over again. Does that make sense? So my hope here is that you will remember you want this to be robustly visual, not just, and by the way, this is not a matter of you writing out your presentation and then saying, well, what pictures can I pull out of Google search to make this kind of visual? No. That's not speaking the language I'm talking about. I'm talking about language called visualish. What I mean is, how can I make this case visually as an alternative form of language? Whereas it's not going to be a way of speaking it. I can show this one visual parallel and everything will come into place. I want to speak visually. I want to begin to write. That's why the next book I'm writing it with Photoshop and PowerPoint. When those flip animations, because the things I'm showing you today on TV, they're not animated for you right now. I'm just showing you the simple image. But I actually animate these in my visual presentation. So things are being added to the screen, fading in, fading out. That's how we, basically the idea here is that you are going to narrate a video which is presented to your audience frame by frame. You can control its pace. You can stop it. This is going to look and feel like a Dateline episode. Like an episode of Dateline that I've been on a bunch of those. And by the way, you will not see 8-point bullets on Dateline episodes. You won't see a lot of words. When Keith Morrison is talking about the case, instead of having a list of words, what he's doing is he's got what they call B-roll. You go back out, you refilm the investigation the way you did it so he can play it visually while he's talking about it. But there won't be a time when you're going to stop and go to a PowerPoint slide and go through the 8 points and bullets. That's just not going to happen in a Dateline episode, and I don't want it to happen in front of my audiences. And I don't care if it's a youth group, if it's a jury trial, if it's a church audience or a conference, I want to make it visual. Now, Parents, if you're hearing these, well, I never make presentations like this. I never stand in front of an audience. Do you have kids? You're talking to your kids, right? We have to make this visual. So that's why I use sometimes, if I don't have visual on me, they say, hey, Jim, we're going to be on a boat, so you're not going to have any way to throw that image. No problem. I'm going to build a message on the basis of props. Object lessons. This is so biblical. Jesus did this all the time. Like a mustard seed, like that mountain, like that fig tree. He constantly pointed to visual objects. He also used word pictures, parables. He made you think visually by using certain kinds of language that create visual pictures in your head. Visual language is the key. So I got two things. Number one, I want to make sure it's robust. Well, first of all, you got to make sure that when we do use visuals, we stay visual. Don't resort to words if you can avoid resorting to words. So keep it visually rich, keep it robust visually, and also, it's not about you. It's to be outwardly focused. It's for you to use with an audience. It's their tool, not your tool. So those two things that we start with. Take a quick break. I'll give you one last tip on how to make your visual presentations more effective.
Connect with Cold Case Christianity on social media. Visit the Cold Case Christianity homepage and click the social media icons on the top right toolbar. Jim is active on Facebook and Twitter, posting the best apologetics articles from over 250 Christian blogs around the country. You'll also find links to Jim's Instagram, Pinterest, and Google Plus accounts, along with a link to the Cold Case Christianity YouTube page. Stay connected with Cold Case Christianity and become a better Christian case maker. Be sure to visit the Cold Case Christianity website daily to read Jim's blog, watch the weekly video, or listen to the Cold Case Christianity podcast. You'll also find great free resources, including the free downloadable monthly Bible insert. While you're there, be sure to sign up for Jim's daily Case Notes email. Cold Case Christianity is designed to help you become a better Christian case maker.
Okay, last thing to think about as you're making visual presentations for others. This is where the KISS principle really does come in. Although I want this to be visually robust and rich, to focus more on visuals than on non-visuals. And words really are non-visual. You put the word on the wall, you're already speaking it, don't need it. This is the next step, and you probably saw this one coming, and that is keep it simple, stupid. Keep it purposely simple. But what I mean is from a visual perspective. Let's keep it simple. There's a bunch of stuff in PowerPoint that is really detrimental to our being able to present a truth claim. So for example, if you see templates, there's templates in every PowerPoint. I'm not going to use templates. That template is clutter. I'm either going to go to black screen, especially if I'm going to go to black screen, not just blank, right? No one's seeing anything. I'm going to do that if I want the eyes of my audience on me. That's why when you pause with your kids, they'll look up and see what are you pausing. The pause sometimes is more dramatic than the information. So I try to use an economy of the kinds of words I use in an audience and take pauses where appropriate to get their attention back. And if I want their attention off the screen and on me, I'm going to have to go to a blank or black screen. Make sense? So you want to keep that part simple. Also, how many times have you seen in PowerPoint that they'll have a header at the top of the screen? So whatever topic you're in your talk, you've turned a corner and now you're in the section about X. Well, then X is probably going to be printed across the top of your screen. Really? Do you really need that there? Why would you? It's taking up space on your screen. It's actually taking up space you could use to talk about something, to show something visual. Also, how many times do you see someone who's got their name at the bottom or the topic of it at the bottom of the slide? It's visual clutter. Keep it simple. Get that out of there. You don't need all that visual branding and clutter on your screen. It's just going to make a mess of your screen. And again, you don't see that on the best presentations are where there's an economy of visual imagery, but it's so powerful that it makes the point for you. I'm trying to think like theoretically and think, well, philosophically, how can I make the approach, the logical reasoning approach, easier to see? And it might just be like in my talks on the resurrection, it's about abductive reasoning. It's about how do I know The best inference from the evidence related to the resurrection is just that Jesus rose from the grave. Well, for me, that starts with this very simple visual presentation of, you saw kind of something similar of Jimmy. I take a picture of him in the room like he's dead, and I say, okay, how do we know what kind of death this is? Of the 4 ways that people die, how do we know which way? It's visually simple. I add an element, add the blood, add a bullet hole, add these things incrementally, and you will see that simple transition from one to the next helps people to learn how to reason in what's called abductive reasoning. Now look, I could have started off with the definition of abductive reasoning printed on the screen. I could have given you 5 principles and bullet points, or I can put a dead guy in a scene and make subtle changes to his body. It makes the case much clearer. Trying to keep it visually and purposefully simple. There's an economy of image that I think is helpful. And then you go back to a black screen and start again. Do not let, oh, by the way, this is nothing that drives me nuts. Have you noticed in a lot of these multimedia presentation programs, either Keynote or PowerPoint, is you've got like 80 different ways you can fly in words on the screen. They can fade in, they can swivel in, they can fly in, they can boomerang in, they can rise in, they can drop in. Don't do that. You know, if you look at Dateline episodes, everything is a cut or a fade. Fade from nothing or cut to the next scene. Transition through black or cut to the next scene. Very simple economy of how you use. If you're going to put words on the screen in a Dateline episode, it's not going to fly in like in PowerPoint. Do you know how many transitions there are from slide to slide in PowerPoint? I can slide over, I can pinch it, I can fly up, I can swivel in. Oh my gosh, don't do any of that. Cuts and fades. This is what's done in professional filmmaking. When's the last time you watched a movie and the transition from scene to scene involved all that craziness? It doesn't happen. It's a cut or a fade. It's a fade right from one scene to the other, or it's a fade through black, but it's a cut or a fade. So what we want to do is try to mimic what's happening in the world in which our audience is familiar. And they're familiar with TV production and movie production. So I want our visual media to be as simple as that. An economy of transitions. Oh, another thing that drives me crazy. How many times have you seen that people not only have way too many words, but they'll also have way too many kinds of fonts, different fonts or colors of font? No, keep it simple. The most you're going to have in any presentation is 2 different styles of font. One for emphasis, one for just the common. But my point is, if you keep it simple visually, it pays dividends. All right, I give you 3 simple principles. Hopefully that'll help you be better communicators with visual media. And I just hope that kind of helps you reach Gen Z, who are an entirely visual native, digital native generation. All right, that's it for this week. I'll see you here next week at Cold-Case Christianity.
Thanks for joining us at the Cold-Case Christianity Broadcast. If you're interested in more information about this week's topic, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. For a thorough investigation of the reliability of the New Testament Gospels and the case for Christianity, be sure to purchase Cold Case Christianity, God's Crime Scene, Forensic Faith, and Alive.